feel hard to swallow. Whether it is depression, anxiety, or simply feeling stuck in life, so many of us struggle with mental health issues, don't we? In fact, the National Institute of Mental Health estimated in 2023 that 1 out of 3 of us has dealt with depression or anxiety. I, myself, fell into a deep depression during a very dark period of our lives when my family and I were grieving the fact that I had multiple miscarriages. But relief came unexpectedly by becoming foster parents. So that's when my fascination with altruism began, because I thought, how could something so challenging turn out to be so healing and fulfilling? But that's enough about me. I want to tell you a story about an extreme altruist. Her name is Sharon Stevens from Louisville, Kentucky. This woman rallied her entire community to help a stranger, a widower with 2 young daughters, and the youngest one needed a major organ transplant in order to live. So not only did Sharon Stevens help by raising funds through the local community to cover the medical bills that were piling up, as we know they do, but also, as luck would have it, the day a donor became available, their city was slammed with 16 inches of snow. So getting this girl where she needed to be for the transplant seemed impossible. Roads were shut down. But she never gave up hope. She found a helicopter pilot that was crazy enough to be willing to fly through this massive storm, and then she got on the local news and rallied up community members to get up from their warm and cozy couches and show up at this empty parking lot with their own shovels to clear out snow so that the helicopter could land. It was a beautiful story, and what seemed impossible was made possible. Thanks to this tidal wave of kindness, one person just influencing another and another. It was infectious. And that story made me think, what's in the water in Louisville, Kentucky? What are these people drinking, right? I want to move there. Were they all born altruistic like that? Are we all born altruistic, only to be corrupted into being self-centered? And maybe the most provocative question I had was, is there such a thing as truly being altruistic? The definition of altruism is that when we put somebody else's well-being ahead of our own, with no benefit to ourselves. It's a term that was coined in the 19th century by a French philosopher, and it comes from the Latin word alter, which means other, others. So it's kind of like the cornerstone for ethical behavior, empathy, and collaboration. But my point is, when people come together, like in the case of Sharon Stevens and her community, that's not just a display of social kindness. It is so much more than that. It's a fundamental aspect of our biology. Because cooperation from the smallest cells in our bodies to the largest animal group is crucial to solving complex problems and even to our survival. Just like our cells collaborate to keep us healthy by identifying, targeting, and eliminating pathogens that enter our bodies, and animals collaborate to survive, we humans, now more than ever, must collaborate to innovate, to build thriving and healthy communities, and yes, to help each other in times of need. It's a fundamental aspect of our biology because altruism is typically considered a unique human trait, but scientists have been observing altruistic behavior in animals as well. Take the research of Franz de Waal on chimpanzees and bonobos, for example. He found them collaborating to obtain food and then sharing food with no reward to themselves. Ants. Have you ever seen the little trail the ants leave behind and wonder what's that all about? When an ant leaves its colony to find food, on the way back, it lays down that trail so that other ants can find their way to nourishment. So it's seen all over the animal kingdom. But back to that provocative question, is there such a thing as truly being altruistic? Can we really do a good deed for someone without a tiny little voice in our head just whispering what's in it for me? They say there's no such thing as a free lunch, right? Richard Dawkins, a famous biologist, in his famous book, The Selfish Gene, argued that behaviors appearing altruistic in nature often have selfish roots. And then a psychologist, Daniel Batson, had this empathy-altruism hypothesis, and he was a little less skeptical. He said that genuine altruism can exist, but it's intertwined with self-benefit. Any Taylor Swift fans here in the room? Any Swifties? Even she captured this paradox in her lyrics to Anti-Hero. Most people know her song for the catchy verse that says, "It's me, hi, I'm the problem, it's me." But there's a much deeper verse in that song that captures this tension of selfish altruism, if you will. She says, "Did you hear my covert narcissism I disguise as altruism, like some kind of congressman, tale as old as time." She calls it covert narcissism, semantics. In researching a little, I found out this phenomenon. It's called selfish altruism. And it's a tale as old as time because scientists have been looking at it for a while. Megan Filkowski in 2016 did a study with human subjects, and she uncovered that while pro-social acts benefit the person receiving the act, there are tremendous benefits to the person doing it, not just psychological, but physiological as well. Another researcher, he was a bioethics researcher, Stephen Post, in 1990, he did a study, and his human subjects that were engaged in altruism reported higher levels of happiness, higher levels of satisfaction with life, which is essentially happiness, and lower levels of, guess what? Depression and anxiety. Even longevity was affected. His subjects that were 55 years or older were 63% less likely to die during the duration of the study, even when you account for health factors prior to that study. And of course, we have plenty of MRI data, actual images, pictures of our brains that shows when we engage in altruism, it flares up. And the same areas that flare up when we engage in altruism are those that engage when we are doing other pleasurable activities, like eating chocolate or even kissing. Let's just call it kissing to keep this PG-13, shall we? So yeah, doing good feels good. That's not just an old adage. It is science. And the funny thing is, the relationship between happiness and altruism is bidirectional, meaning that happier people engage in more altruism. And engaging in altruism contributes to even more happiness. So it creates this joyful little circle that just keeps on spinning. So with all this being said, altruism is the antidote. We should all be practicing all the time, right? It will cure all of our mental and physical issues, or at least some of them. Well, but just like everything else in life, we have to strike a balance because too much altruism can be problematic. It can lead to emotional exhaustion and burnout. In fact, I came across this quote, and I had to use it because it captures this. It says, "Kindness is sort of like makeup. Too much of it, and you begin to look like a clown." Too much altruism can definitely be a problem. In fact, there's a whole school of thought against the idea of altruism altogether. There's this famous Russian philosopher, her name is Ayn Rand, and she used to say that altruism leads to collectivism, that it erodes individual freedom, and it stifles innovation and productivity. She would argue that the highest moral purpose of life is for us to put our self-interest first. The highest moral purpose of life. And she said that if we all did that collectively as a society, we would all be better off. The way I interpreted it is kind of like she had this utopia where we lived in a society where nobody needed anybody. I find that a bit extreme. And I'd like to believe that there is a happy medium, there's a spectrum that we can find our places in between extreme altruism and Rand's objectivism, where we can live a happy and fulfilling life while also being of service. I found all kinds of things that I can do to have fun while being of service. I can dine, I can shop, and I can even travel while being of service. But that's material for another TEDx talk. Just look it up. My point is, for far too long, we have held this pessimistic view that we are born innately selfish. Maybe it came from survival of the fittest or natural selection mindsets that was passed on to us by earlier scholars. Or heck, maybe it was just our parents telling us that we have to compete, telling us that we have to be competitive and compete for limited resources in this dangerous and scarce world. But times have shifted. And we are at a point break in history where cooperation is far more important than competition. And we need to shift this mindset, this paradigm of being proud to say, I'm competitive, to embracing the concept and being proud to say, I'm collaborative, as if our lives depended on it, because maybe, just maybe it does. And I'm here to tell you tonight that I've done a little research, and there are tons of more recent behavior science studies and social experiments that actually point to the fact that we are born collaborative. It's only when we have the time and ability to strategize about our decisions that our selfish tendencies seem to rear their ugly heads. Many studies that were replicated, from the public's good game to the prisoner's dilemma. I'm sure we've all seen those cop shows, right? Where they put different suspects in different rooms and they start interrogating them. At first, nobody says a word. They don't want to turn on one another. But when they begin to weigh the pros and cons, the story changes. When we act on instinct, we want to help. We want to be collaborative. Tonight, I want you to think about this. If we are born, just flirt with this idea for a second, instinctively collaborative, and if science has proven that doing good feels so good, it does us good not just for our mental health, but also our physical health, I want you to think about this. Why is it that we get so busy and we forget to do it more often? Whether it is altruism, a grand act, or just a small little act of kindness, why is it that we don't do it more often? Is it because we don't want to feel like a narcissist or a hypocrite doing good so that we can feel good? Or is it because we don't think that our actions could even make a dent? If your hesitation is the first one, I say do good so you can feel good. Selfish altruism is a scientific phenomenon. We all experience it, so you might as well embrace it. In fact, I'll go even further. I say, if you're engaged in a good organization, if you're doing something good for your community, then brag about it, even if just a little. Don't worry about what people thinking that you're a narcissist for sharing that. Brag about it. Let's bring our good deeds to light and make it a movement, make it infectious, just like Sharon Stevens did in her community. Just think about this. We're all guilty of bragging about the most frivolous things. A new haircut, a new car, our daily workouts. I know I do it. So why not brag about something that is far more meaningful in hopes that we can influence one another? Think about that. But if your hesitation is the latter, you feel powerless. You feel like your small good deeds won't even make a dent. Then unfortunately, I don't have an answer for you, because I'm right there with you. But whenever I feel discouraged, I try to think of Mother Teresa because she had an answer and she put it best. She said, if you can't feed 100 people, feed one. Just one. And we're not just talking about food here, right? We're talking about your gift. Share your gift with the world, even if it's one person. Tonight is an invitation for you all to explore the deeper truth that in giving selflessly, we're not just helping others, but we're unlocking a sustainable source of happiness for ourselves that we didn't even know existed. It's through the very act of lifting someone else that we find the most fulfilled version of ourselves. So let that thought linger. And tomorrow, see where it takes you. Because after all, who doesn't love chocolate and kissing?